And I should tell you a little bit about his story, because if you're going to study hypocrisy in the Quran, you got to know this guy. That's like if you're going to study kafir, you better know Fir'aun. Right? If you're going to study munafiq, you better know Abdullah bin Ubay. You need to know. If you don't know all the others, you got to know this one. This guy was actually a citizen of Medina. And Medina was made up of two major tribes, Aus and Khazraj. Khazraj was the bigger one, and Aus was the smaller one. And Aus, you can say, altogether combined, they had 8 counties. You can think of them like counties nowadays, okay? One of them had 8 counties, the other one had 4 counties. How many counties altogether? 12, right? He was, you can say, the governor of the biggest county. Of all the 12 counties, part of Khazraj. First of all, he's from the bigger tribe. Then he's head of the biggest county, biggest family within them. And he's in charge. And the people of Medina decided, before the Prophet came, before Islam, they decided that we have all these different districts, we have all these different counties, we should unify all of them and create Yathrib, meaning the previous name of Medina, as a kingdom. And we should name one unanimous king. And they started inaugurating who should we pick among us, and they decided that the governor of the biggest district should become the king. And so that was going to be who? Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. He was actually inaugurated as their king. And so they started preparing a throne in Medina, in Yathrib, and an inauguration ceremony to celebrate the appointment of their first king. This is the situation of Medina. And just literally days before he's supposed to be signed into office and take his oath as president, if you will, the Prophet ﷺ arrives in Medina. And when the Prophet ﷺ arrives in Medina, all this district and king business is done. The political campaign is over. It's completely washed off, because now the unanimous governor of Medina is who? Is Rasulullah ﷺ over the Muslims and even the non-Muslims. His entire political career disappeared in a flash. And you know, when somebody loses, after winning the election, they still don't get the presidency? That's gonna rub you wrong a little bit. And then the one who cost you the presidency, you're not gonna really like him that much. But he had 2 choices. One, he could become direct enemy and create his own party. Like if some people wonder, if Donald Trump doesn't get the Republican nomination, he might run as an independent, right? So you have the option of just taking your own. Let me see who's loyal to me, and let me make my own group and then fight them and then see who comes out on top. But he realized that actually all of a sudden, even though the majority used to be with him, now the majority is with who? With Rasulullah. So opposing him is definitely a losing proposition. If I oppose him, there's no way I'm winning this election. So if you can't beat him, join him. So he accepts Islam because that's the only way he can stay with the winning party. And he's hoping, if I didn't get the presidency, maybe I can work my way up to the vice presidency. Maybe I could do that much. The problem with that was, the Prophet ﷺ, the closest people to him were the ones that made the most sacrifices. And the ones that made the most sacrifices were people like Abu Bakr, Umar. These are people from Makkah or Medina. They're people from Makkah. So now not only do we have a foreigner king, his closest associates are all foreigners too, immigrants. And when you're from Arabs in particular at that time, and even today, when you're from a region, you think about the politics, the leaders of that region should belong to where? That region. Every politician even nowadays, even if they're running for a local district, I'm a fellow Texan, and I'm from Tarrant County. They're gonna emphasize how local they are, isn't it? But now all of a sudden the leadership of Medina belongs in the hands of a group of immigrants. And actually not only Rasulullah ﷺ himself, literally, by the way, they're called muhajirun, which means immigrants, right? They're the ones who migrated. And the head of them is a migrant, and then the closest ones around him are also migrants, And he's trying to fit himself into the vice presidency. He doesn't get any room. Because the only way to get close to Rasulullah ﷺ is to make more and more and more sacrifices. The only way you have to prove yourself. These people have proven themselves for well over a decade. The people of Medina, Badr hasn't even happened yet. No tests have happened yet. So he's got no way to show his political importance. So what did he used to do? He used to actually show up to the prayer, every prayer, early. And he used to be in the first row in every prayer, especially Fajr. And if the Prophet ﷺ would ever make an announcement, he would get up right before the Prophet ﷺ and say, people, listen carefully. Rasulullah is about to speak. And then he sat down. Because he missed the mic. And now the mic belongs to who? To Rasulullah. So at least he gets to be the MC. Nobody invited him to be the MC. But this way at least he gets to see that people won't forget my face. They'll still see me in the public eye. So he needs to show constantly. And then he had to come to the Prophet ﷺ. He hated the Prophet ﷺ. He hated him, obviously why? Because the Prophet is the reason ﷺ, that his political career came to an end. You understand? That's why he hates him. But still, to show the people, he has to go and sit next to the Prophet ﷺ and convince the Prophet of how loyal he is and how well he means for Islam and all of it. But the thing about politicians is they can give big speeches. But when it comes to going to war, for example, do they go to war or do they send the young sons and daughters of the land to the war? They send the poor. By the way, they mostly send the poor people. They don't even send their own kids to war. They send everybody else's kid to war. When Badr is about to happen, because he's actually genuinely a politician, is he willing and eager to join the battle? No, that's not his thing. His thing was politics. His thing was not sacrifice. Sacrifice is for the lower class. He's from the elite class. He's from the upper class of Yathrib society. But Islam comes and there's no more upper class and lower class. Everybody's Muslim. And he's standing there. And by the way, when leaders of tribes back in the day, when they came, people greeted them. They gave them special chairs. Even nowadays, you have class society in many places. They have special places to sit. You don't have like the truck driver and the CEO sitting in the same place. And we have this mentality even to this day. To this day, so many parts, sadly, even of the Muslim world. When you go, you have a clear class society. You have people that are wealthy, they're going to have the elite car and this and that, and they have their drivers that are just walking around opening the door for them and this and that, and they're not even said salam to. People don't even say salam to the Muslims, and they don't even say salam to them, And you have this like VIP, I saw this, it was so disgusting. I went to a Muslim country, went to Jumu'ah, and in Jumu'ah, the first 3 rows, they had like this kind of security line, VIP section. Rasulullah ﷺ didn't have a VIP section. How do you have a VIP section? The entire purpose of making rows in the prayer was that the black and the white and the slave and the free and the poor and the rich and the sick and the healthy, the young and the old, they stand in one row. They left everything behind. That was the point. But for some people, getting that class system out of their head is very difficult. For Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, it was very difficult. And people around him also, it was very difficult. Because this Islam came and it gave these immigrants this status, and one day he's standing there, next to him is Bilal. Next day, another time next to him is a servant. Not even an immigrant, a servant of an immigrant. Standing next to him in prayer, and he's like, why should I be? These are aradiluna, badi ar-ra'i, Quran says. These are our riffraff. This is the second class. What are they standing next to us for? This is what people of the past, the kuffar, used to say to people like Nuh alayhi salam, Salih alayhi salam. We want to listen to what you have to say. The problem is you have these low-class people around you all the time. If you want to come to a 4-star restaurant or something, we can sit in a nice executive setting. Maybe you come into my office because I don't want to come into your poor neighborhood and talk to you. It's beneath me. This is beneath me. This is the attitude that they brought towards the prophets. So this is one category of hypocrite that I wanted to introduce you to. People who accepted Islam, but they didn't accept Islam because they were convinced of Islam. They didn't accept Islam because they loved Islam. They accepted Islam because this was the only way to keep their political career, hoping things will turn around eventually. They say keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer, right? So that's what the idea was. He's going to keep his enemy, Rasulullah ﷺ, closer even. He's going to keep him closer. Now, that's one category of hypocrite. But these ayat that we're about to get into, the beauty of them is that Allah Azza wa Jal is so vast in His speech, and He's so all-encompassing in His speech, that multiple groups are targeted with the same statement. This is part of the beauties of the Quran. Look, I'll give you an example. In a classroom, you have students, and different students have made different mistakes. One student failed the test, another student didn't do their homework, another student comes late, another student is disrupting the class. There are different crimes within the classroom. And the teacher says, some people here are in big trouble. All he says is, some people here are in big trouble. When the teacher says that, who is he referring to? He didn't make it clear, by the way. The teacher did not make it clear. Or even if the teacher says, one of you is in big trouble. And he didn't specify which one. Every one of them who's been up to no good is thinking, oh my God, that's about me. The next one's thinking, that's about me. The next one's thinking, that's about me. You understand? So sometimes the wisdom in speech is to keep things what? General. So that it applies to the maximum number of people. The first group of people is the hypocrites. And I gave you the example of the leader among them. There's another among them, another category of hypocrites. These are people who accepted Islam, but they didn't realize that they were signing up for something very serious. In other words, I'll give you, there's a big difference between that Islam and this Islam. Big difference. When somebody accepts Islam today, maybe somebody lives in an apartment by themselves, their parents have passed away, they're alone, and they decide that they just go YouTube some videos, they watch somebody's video, they saw Sheikh Yusuf Estes or something, or watch something from Mufti Menk, and they say, Islam is interesting. And they start watching a few videos and they decide they want to become Muslim, then they Google the closest masjid, they go there, take Shahada. They become Muslim. How has their life changed? Their life has changed because pork is gone, alcohol is gone, now they're starting to wake up really early and pray. Some changes have come in their life, yes? But back then, I want you to understand, in Medina, when somebody accepted Islam, it wasn't just that their diet changed, or now they're going to fast in Ramadan, or they're going to pray 5 times a day. You know what it meant? It meant that they are joining a campaign, a struggle, and they are directly offending Quraysh. They are becoming enemies of the biggest tribe in Arabia. They are declaring war against the most powerful force in the region. Only by taking the Shahada, it was an act of loyalty to Islam, which means it was an act of war against Quraysh. It's going to come with consequences. Isn't it true that the Sahaba, the people of Makkah who accepted Islam, didn't they get in big trouble? Why did they get in big trouble? They weren't even halal and haram food hadn't been revealed yet. Most of that time, 5 prayers haven't even been revealed yet. Laws of riba were not revealed yet. Fasting was not revealed yet. Clothing restrictions were not revealed yet. Nothing of the things you think about when you think of Islam was there in Makkah. Almost nothing of it was there in Makkah. There was no fasting yet. There was no 5 daily prayer yet. That was much later in Makkah. There was no clothing restrictions yet for women. There was no prohibition of alcohol yet. Nothing. Why are they getting in trouble? Because when you accept Islam, you've declared your loyalties to the Prophet ﷺ, which means you have undeclared your loyalties to your tribe and who they worship. It was an act of defiance. So when you accept Islam in that day, basically you've joined a military. I'm putting it simply to you. Basically you are ready to join a military. You're not just accepting a religion. You're joining a movement. Now the thing is, these people saw this religion, it makes sense. There's one God, there's this beautiful revelation, beautiful words that we've never heard before. All of it makes sense. It appeals to my inner self, it appeals to my inner nature. This is something that just resonates with me. It's a rational faith. I'm going to accept. My heart, connects with this faith. I'm going to accept it. But then call came for spending in the path of Allah, migrating in the path of Allah, fighting in the path of Allah. Quraysh are coming. And now you better prepare a military. And the Prophet ﷺ is going to ask for these people who just accepted Islam to join the army. And they're like, we didn't sign up for this. I just wanted to pray. I like praying. I like recitation. I want to fix my tajweed and stuff. But this whole Badr business, where did that come from? I'm just a farmer, man. I don't even have something to fight with. And most of us, we don't even have swords. You want us to go into battle? I mean, if you study the number of swords at Badr, it'll tell you how much military background these people had. Just the number of swords. For the meager militia of 313. For these people even to be mentally willing to go and fight. You understand what was being asked of them. So what I'm saying is they accepted Islam genuinely. But when they realized that Islam requires a lot of sacrifices, serious sacrifices of money and of self, then they decided to take a few steps back and say, I don't know if this is for me. I'm not so sure if this is the best thing. I mean, before this, life in Yathrib was pretty easy. This is making things complicated. And who was there to gather those people and make their doubts even worse? Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul. He had his political reasons for being a hypocrite, but he could prey on the ones that were weak in their faith and gather them around him. You understand? So these 2 groups of people make up the munafiqeen. They go from weakness of iman to straight into nifaaq, to hypocrisy. Now there's a